Today is part of the series of sort of the DDD lectures that are critically important to what we do as practicing ID microbiology clinicians, but are somewhat tangentially related to the content. It's my privilege to have Dr. Shelly Dev here today. Many of you will have heard her speak, but if you haven't, you are in for a treat. Dr. Dev is a staff intensivist at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre in Toronto since 2006, after completing her internal medicine residency and critical care fellowship at the University of Toronto and a fellowship in multimedia education at the New England Journal of Medicine. She is a clinician educator and associate professor of medicine, director of education in the Department of Critical Care Medicine at Sunnybrook, and the lead for mentorship and wellness in the Interdepartmental Division of Critical Care Medicine at U of T. She's a multi-award winning medical educator of undergrad, postgrad, and continuing medical education audiences. In addition to over 300 invited lectures from national and international audiences about healthcare worker mental health burnout, resilience, leadership, and medical culture, Dr. Dev has written and spoken extensively on these topics in the wider media. But if asked, she would say that her most significant accomplishment to date is continuing to convince her 17-year-old and 15-year-old sons to hang out with her in public. I think that resonates with many of us. So thank you very much for being here today and speaking to us about some of these important topics. Welcome.
Thank you. So first, thank you to Dr. Johnstone, Jenny, for this generous invitation. And I'm very grateful that you all tuned in and showed up to spend time with me, an interloper, because as you've heard, I'm not an infectious diseases physician. I'm an ICU physician, but I would relish the opportunity to convince you that I am far more ID adjacent than most ICU physicians. And I'll explain. So about 75 years ago, when I was nearing my PGY 3-year in internal medicine at U of T, I made a decision that I would apply to the ID fellowship program. And to be clear, my prospects were not good because I was of the Nick Daneman and Adrian Chan vintage. So in baseball vernacular, with which I'm sure we've all recently become acquainted, you'd call those two people heavy hitters, and I would be more comparable to the team mascot, as in, she's a lot of fun, but can she get on base? So betting odds aside, I remain resolute. This weird and wild specialty of ID was just the medicine for weird and wild me. But like all good stories, there's a twist. And it came when I did the required 2 blocks of ICU in my last 2 months of my PGY 2-year. And I emphasize required because back then, if given the choice, there was no way I would choose to spend a moment in the ICU, and what normal person would. But when I failed to persuade the medicine program director that all the alarms that go off in the ICU would exacerbate my previously undisclosed condition of hyperacusis, they did not buy this excuse. I had no choice but to do this rotation. And so it goes. I found another specialty with its own intriguing blend of weird and wild. So what does she do? In my PGY 3-year, I submit 2 fellowship applications, just 2. One to Toronto ID, one to Toronto ICU. And I had decided it had to be Toronto or bust because my partner was already doing his fellowship in Toronto. And I know I too would be rolling my eyes at this woman of the world tethering her life choices to a guy, were it not for the fact that he and I just celebrated 20 years of marriage. So it worked out. But all this to say, I put my eggs in 2 poorly woven baskets. Because remember, I was relying on little more than this luminous personality to get accepted. With the interviews behind me and match day looming, my other half, Mike, asks me the important question, Shell, what if you get into ID and ICU? Which will you pick? Which is a legit question because in those days, you didn't rank your choices. You just waited for offers and you accepted the offer you wanted and rejected the ones you didn't. So his question was legitimate, but beautifully delusional. I wasn't getting into both of these programs. It would be front page news if I got into a fellowship program. But Michael lovingly insisted on my having a well-considered, thoughtful plan for my future career. So I came up with one. I'll just say yes to whoever asks me first. That was also my dating philosophy. In the early afternoon of day one of match week, I got paged to the office of Dr. John Granton, then the program director for ICU. This life altering conversation went like this: Hey, Shell, want to be an ICU doctor? I guess I do. The epilogue of this story came a few hours later when I was paged to the office of Dr. Tony Mazzulli, and not because we hang out a lot after school. It's because he was the program director of the ID program. I got in, and with immense gratitude and disbelief, I told him that he and the formidable division of ID at U of T would forever be mercifully spared of my particular brand of weird and wild. So there you have it, my ID cred by virtue of the fact that I miss being an ID doctor by a matter of hours. And that fact, my friends, is what you will eternally refer to as your division-wide close call. I can hear you exhaling in relief. Can you imagine? I will tell John Granton to wait for your thank you emails in the coming days. All right, enough. Let's move on to matters at hand. Before I do start in earnest, which I will, a few things to set your expectations for our time together. First, if I'm awake, as I appear to be, you will undoubtedly hear me at some point swear, and undoubtedly more than once. I can barely believe it hasn't yet happened. But I will endeavor to keep things classy because, above all else, I'm sure many of you will agree, am a fucking lady. Second, I have no slides. That's right, when I give a talk, that's what I do, I talk. Just me monopolizing your screen for a long time. So if you need to avert your eyes or just look away altogether, I totally get it. All I want is that you sit comfortably with open ears and an open mind. And finally, for our time here together, I will be talking about us as a community of healthcare workers and you, the people who do this challenging work. In choosing to focus in this way does not mean I am not holding the systems and institutions we work within accountable for their impact on the way that we work. We are owed much space and time to address that alone, but for our time together today, I have chosen to make it about you, and I have chosen to make it about us. And we, the healthcare workers, according to so much data collected over so many years now across every single medical subspecialty, have been struggling. Never more so than in the last 5 years. Yes, I am and I will be talking about the pandemic, and I will ask that you think back on that time. I know that ask for this division, perhaps more than any other, is not benign, and it's maybe even a painful request. But I am asking for a good reason, I promise. Since 2017, right through COVID and up to the moment today, I have spoken with thousands of healthcare workers all over the world. Nurses, doctors, pharmacists, physios, RTs, dietitians, technicians, about the way in which they navigate the demands that come with medical work. And all of them are in resounding agreement. The pandemic aftermath has been, in a way, wearier and gnarlier, and there is more noticeable anger. I have seen it. I have felt it. Anger is medical culture's ubiquitous distress shapeshifter, inhabiting so many different forms, all over the place, all day, every day. Think about it. Cruelty disguised as humor, derision of other colleagues or teams or subspecialties, outright angry outbursts sometimes, freezing people out with silence. For the record, in my own professional life, I have behaved in all these angry ways far too many times to bear recounting, and sometimes I still do. And we tend to incuriously move past these angers and accept them as natural artifacts of a stressful job, this stressful job. But anger is so worthy of our curiosity because, according to psychologists, it's an incomplete manifestation. It's the smallest preview of a far more intricate story. I learned this during the very beginning of the pandemic when I enlisted the help of a child psychologist to navigate the raging outbursts of my then 12-year-old son, Nathan, during repeated school lockdowns. She introduced us to the anger iceberg. Anger, she said, is the tip of an iceberg. It's the part of the iceberg above water, the part of the iceberg we can see. But most of an iceberg is underwater, beneath the surface. And like an iceberg, anger is just the most visible manifestation of more complex underlying feelings, like disappointment, frustration, embarrassment, and shame, helplessness, guilt, anxiety, and fear, insecurity, loneliness, and sadness. When Nathan looked at the iceberg, he found the words for his anger. I'm frustrated with the uncertainty of how long the pandemic will go on. I feel isolated being away from my friends and sad about what I'm missing with them. I'm afraid when you go to work with the COVID patients in the ICU. Uncovering the emotional vocabulary for his anger was clearly relieving for Nathan, and for us it was utterly illuminating. So relatable, so human. He's just a good kid having some bad days amid unpredictable circumstances. This illumination followed me into work, and then I saw it everywhere. Good people having bad days amid unpredictable circumstances. And I landed on an ardent belief that there are far more bad days than there are true assholes. I think we see a lot of good people at work having a lot of bad days. But instead of finding the language for the understandably messy feelings that arise from the tricky work we do every day, we cope in the most culturally appropriate and permissible way we know how. We get mad. But if the very smart child psychologist is to be believed, the anger that surfaces in our workplaces is just that tip of the iceberg, alerting us to far more revealing thoughts and emotions submerged beneath the surface. The reason why we do this, why we bury and cope instead of excavate and examine, can be located back to the moments when we've been the most vulnerable and therefore most impressionable at work. It's on all those first days. First day of medical school, first day in the hospital, in the clinic, the OR, the lab, first day of clerkship, first day of residency, first day on call, first day as a senior, first day as a fellow, first day as staff, first day in the role that you have today. You can spot a first day person at work right away. They're the ones standing alone in some random spot and their head is moving all around, watching all the newness, but also desperately looking for something or someone familiar, until that merciful intervention when an insider approaches and says, hey, come with me. I'll show you how we do things around here. How we do things around here defines the culture of our workplaces. We all began our enculturation into medicine the moment we stepped into medical school. That life-altering first step we took as civilians from the outside to the inside of medicine. And in that instant, we began learning how to act and react by watching the insiders act and react. And crucially, we all learned to cope at work by watching insiders coping. And we all learned on all those medical first days that to angrily cope in those many ways is more culturally appropriate than it is to be open and truthful about how difficult it is to do your amazing job. Difficult and amazing. These are two words you'll be hearing a lot from me today, because it's these two words that remind us of the inherent duality of our lives in medicine. It is always, reliably, two things at once, difficult and amazing. It's when we submerge the difficult instead of scrutinizing it that we default to angry coping, only to miss finding the amazing, the meaning inside of that difficult experience. But instead of spending time looking within the experiences, we are trained, incentivized, and urged to keep our gazes fixed forward ahead and beyond, always looking towards what is coming next. How little we look within the journey we're still very much engaged in. How little we look back on how far we've already journeyed. How little relative to the time lavished on what we are always yet to become. And becoming is an intoxicating experience. During a recent week on call, I had a real-time reminder of just how intoxicated. A medical student had asked to shadow me on what would be my 7th day of a 7-day stretch of 24-hour call. Now, me on day 1 or even day 5 of a call week is, if I may say so, prime shadowing material. But on day 7, this shit is barely being held together by caffeine and overpriced skincare. All of this to say, the last call day is not one where I want to be fielding a lot of Dr. Dev, what does that mean questions? And bless her, this gal had questions. But at one point, I caught sight of her standing apart from our team that was rounding, and she's just watching. Her eyes are wide and alert, and her eyes are bouncing around from the monitor on from the waveforms on the monitor to like the ventilator and the RT adjusting the ventilator to the nurse who's priming the pumps to the patient who started stirring because we lightened their sedation to the family who's like at the bedside hanging on to our every word. She's becoming familiar. She's becoming part of the inside. To remind yourself of how truly powerful this becoming process is, locate any new member of your team and just watch them watching. And we must remind ourselves of this, because reminding ourselves of ourselves in this endless becoming is essential to the practice of true humanistic medicine. It's a practice that we, as healthcare workers, know very little about. Okay, but wait, what are you talking about, Shelly Dev? We specialize in humans. Why else would medicine be called the humanistic profession? Well, more than fact, it is a statement of belief that the work of caring for humans naturally makes us humane. It astounds me how much my own decision to apply to medical school was informed by this belief, and how little I really knew about the daily reality of the profession I was convinced I wanted to commit my life to. It's really only once you're inside of medicine that you see all the complexities within, kind of like opening up the back of a clock to see all the gears moving, when up until then, all you saw were numbers in the hands of time. Beyond our belief that medicine is a humanistic pursuit, how much do we really understand about humanism itself? What is behind the humanistic practice of medicine? The first documented examples of humanistic thought can be located more than 2,600 years ago in ancient India and China, as well as among pre-Socratic Greek philosophers. It was Kongji, better known to us as the Chinese philosopher Confucius, who, in the 4th century before the Common Era, described a collection of traits under the term Ren, R-E-N. These were benevolence, virtue, ethical wisdom, and goodness. The premise that we humans are born with these traits, this Ren, speaks to the central tenet of humanistic thought, which simply put is this: human nature is good. You are good. Importantly, sometime later, Confucian disciple Mengji would elaborate on the concept of Ren by calling it a seed of goodness, a seed that has the potential to germinate into good acts. Mengji would speak of a purposeful reflecting on our inherent capacity to be good, so that it transforms into doing good. Humanistic medicine then could be imagined as a deliberate practice, evolving as the practitioner carefully nurtures their capacity for goodness, and then channels the fruits of that evolution into the work of trying to help people. What a lovely way to describe what we do as physicians. But when, during our steepest trajectories of becoming, Do we learn the professional value of nurturing our inner goodness? Not during our training, and certainly not in our working lives. It just doesn't happen. And to be clear, I don't for one moment mean to say we aren't good people. Yes, there is a psychopath or two in every population. They don't know who they are, but you sure as hell know. Am I right? You're texting someone a name right now. I know you are. And if you are not getting or sending a text right now, you need to reflect a little. I'm just saying. But psychopaths aside, by and large, I know that you all, as a collective, are good. What I also know, however, is that we shine such a blinding light on what we get done, that the myriad ways in which we are affected in the process resides only in the shadows, unseen, unshared, and so, contrary to Manju's directive, unexamined and ultimately forgotten. From the start of medical school throughout our training and well into our careers, we are unaware that while we are intensely engaged in the process of becoming the healthcare worker, we are simultaneously engaged in a process of forgetting the human. And throughout our careers, we continue to forget that in essence, we are trying to help humans as fellow humans. We forget how to express understandable, typical human vulnerability. And it's so easy to forget because everyone around us is forgetting too. Forgetting how to respond to our own despair like regular people. Forgetting that we are regular people who have experienced moments of suffering. Yes, I said suffering. Every one of us can conjure moments or images that we associate with human suffering. We have an idea of what suffering looks like, and we keep that separate from our personal experiences of difficulty. I think it's a degree of anguish that we don't allow ourselves to relate to. I can see that you are suffering with this, is what my therapist said to me many years ago at a time of personal crisis. I immediately flinched when he said it and objected to his use of the word in relation to my problems. I have seen suffering in the ICU where I work, and this is not that, I assured him. Then he clarified to me what the experience of not physical, but psychological suffering was. The feeling of prolonged emotional or psychological distress in the wake of an unexpected or unwanted outcome. When mistakes are made or things are missed, when our patients don't get better, when our patients die, when relationships end, when we lose people, when life gets hijacked by a pandemic for years. All of these things will and have happened to all of us, none of them welcomed, and a lot of them beyond our control. Suffering imagined in this way is part of what it means to be human. That we will all struggle is inevitable, without choice. Deciding to purposefully examine the struggle, to know ourselves more deeply, is the choice we do have. It's in that purposeful response that we locate the meaning of these experiences to us. What are these difficult experiences telling us about the ways in which we need to grow, evolve, be better? The idea that suffering carries meaning within it is a very ancient one. In the earliest Buddhist texts from the 5th or 6th century before the Common Era is the parable of the two arrows. It says, in life, we cannot control the first arrow. The second arrow, however, is optional. The first arrow is those inevitable moments of regular human psychological suffering that will appear throughout our lives. But that second arrow is one of volitional self-infliction. We incur additional injuries when we turn away from our wounds or cruelly judge ourselves for suffering them in the first place. That second arrow is not inevitable. We can choose differently. We can choose to heal from our psychic wounds by first sitting amid their pain, which is hard, and then examining them, being curious about them, recognizing how they have necessarily changed us, determining what they mean to us, instead of bandaging over and concealing them. Among the most useful insights I've read on the meaning of suffering come from the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl in his vital book, published in 1946, Man's Search for Meaning. In it, he says, we find meaning in our lives in one of three ways. First, through our work and the purpose it gives us. Second, through love in our relationships. And third, through moments of personal suffering, which he says are part of the human experience. It's how we respond to those most difficult times, to those first arrows, that we begin to understand ourselves and become aware of the lessons embedded within the hardship. From Eastern Buddhist philosophies and Western thinkers like Frankl to the earliest and most contemporary work of artists, we see thematic similarities. The wound is the place where light enters you. Those are the words from the 13th century Sufi poet Rumi, describing the opportunity for personal illumination when we suffer psychic injury. Rumi's imagery can be found in the words of our beloved Canadian poet and songwriter Leonard Cohen when he sings in his song Anthem, "There is a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in." It's in those breaks where we grow and learn most, but only if we choose to look at these breaks carefully and contemplate them. And that's not something we naturally do. Why would we? Who wants to spend more time with a hardship? But it's not just that we tend to look away from our human discomfort. We are revered and rewarded for doing so. The physician who unflinchingly bounds over life's inevitable cracks and carries on is the ideal one, the most unflappable, most successful, most resilient. And having spoken to now thousands of people worldwide across various healthcare professions, I've observed firsthand this universal descriptor of the enviably resilient healthcare worker, the machine that keeps working, delivering no matter what. This was never more on display than during the pandemic. In my own hospital, every day of the pandemic, I walked under a banner that said, "Where the impossible becomes I'm possible." Barf. In the aftermath of those 3 grueling years, the invitations I received to speak on resilience and wellness and burnout aren't waning. Not at all. They're increasing everywhere. I am busy. Why? It's because what we say we are, resilient people and resilient teams who've made it to the other side of a plague, is really at odds with how we feel. We don't feel the victoriousness we intellectually associate with resilience because we in the medical community haven't actually cultivated true resilience. What we did do was barrel through a life-changing disaster without ever looking up. And when that disaster cleared, we kept barreling and called that resilience. We have over generations now accepted this idea of resilience in our medical culture that is an absolute perversion of what it truly means to be resilient. So for us to get to the crux of what resilience actually is, we must be able to recognize what it actually is not. Resilience is not about bouncing back, barreling through, pushing against, keeping afloat. Resilience is not moving ahead as though nothing bad is happening or that nothing painful has ever happened. Resilience is not about stepping over the cracks of adversity. Resilience is the process of adapting to, recovering from, and growing through adversity. Think about it. Adapting, recovering, growing. Such purposeful, deliberate, thoughtful acts. Such a purposeful, deliberate, and thoughtful process. If you take one thing away from me today, I want it to be this. Your resilience is not an outcome. Your resilience is a process, a humanistic process, an evolving process that must be anchored to your humanity, to the person you are. This is not about endurance. It's about examination, continued examination, combing through the stories of our lives to recognize and acknowledge the human moments of suffering and then mining them for meaning, to locate the amazing within the difficult. When we see resilience as a transformational, humanistic process, as a nurturing of that seed of goodness so that it can flower, as a growing from rather than getting through, we must know how to begin to engage with that process. So now I'm going to ask you to indulge me in a short exercise. What you're going to do is you're going to take paper and pencil because you're going to make a list, or you can use your phone. Okay. You're going to make a list and I'm going to give you 1 minute to do it. Okay. And no one is going to see this list. This is very private. I'm going to set my timer. Okay. We're just going to take 1 minute. All right. This is where you check the box of this was an interactive session. Okay. So what you're going to do when you're ready, you're going to just jot down whatever comes to your head. Don't think about it. Just put it down onto the paper or your phone. Now, when I say go, I want you to write down all the things in your life that are pissing you off right now. Go. All the shit, all the crap, all the terrible, annoying, irritating things or people or whatever that you have to contend with. Just write it down. Stuff you wish you didn't have to do or be part of. You might even write this talk down. Who knows? Don't think, just write. Okay, stop. Okay, I lied. There's one more list. 1 more minute. It's just 1 more minute. Okay, take a few steps down from that list. You're going to write another list. Okay. I think somebody's phone is on and I'm echoing. Okay. Now, when I say go, I want you to write down all the things in your life that you are grateful for. Go. All the good things. All the things, moments, things you're looking forward to, people that you are grateful for. Just write it down. Okay, stop. Thank you for doing this. Put those aside. I'm going to ask you to look at them in a little bit. It goes somewhere, I promise. Okay, so of course you're thinking, how did she get so wise and evolved? Okay, well, my appreciation of these dualities, this resilience within suffering, the amazing within the difficult, didn't come by way of intellectual pursuit. It came because it had to, because I became too unwell for it not to. I had only been out of training and in practice for a few years at Sunnybrook when I descended into a 3-year period of intense joy after the birth of my 2 sons, juxtaposed by the intense horror of watching my healthy dad, so thrilled at finally becoming a grandfather, die of metastatic cancer. 6 weeks before my dad died, I took a leave from work and we moved my folks in with us. The night before they moved in, I lay in bed, wide awake, paralyzed with one thought. I cannot live through watching him disappear. And then I told myself, Shelly, you're an ICU doctor. You know what death and dying looks like. You can do this. I also knew that my dad was dying and that he would die. I expected it. What I didn't expect was to fall into this bizarrely beautiful normalcy of being around my dad every day, all the time, for the first time in my adult life. We talked, we watched our favorite movies. I sat with him as he slept, ready to talk again when he woke up. And he told me so many things that I didn't know. My 3 and almost 2-year-old sons became accustomed to waking up every morning and jumping on their granddad's hospital bed before breakfast. It was so novel and so lovely. I forgot. I forgot he was dying. So in the moment that my dad took his last breath, I fell to my knees in pain. And it was a pain so suffocating and so chasmic that I believed I was going to die too. How did I, of all people, not know that I had no idea how this felt, that it was this bad, this incomprehensibly devastating? My dad's death was the singular most
Perfect
destabilizing
timing, back
event
up.
of my life.
No, I just came down.
There we go. Soon after my dad died, I began regularly having panic attacks when I was alone with my children. My anxiety around going back to work and taking care of dying patients was intolerable. I became withdrawn, disengaged, and unrelentingly sad about my dad. I didn't understand what was happening to me, but whatever this was, I very much needed it to stop. I had 2 kids under the age of 4 who needed their mom to be well, a husband I love more than anyone who needed his partner with him, a mom who now needed help to navigate the world alone, and a career I had worked so hard to cultivate. I had no choice but to get back to my life again, and I just didn't know how that was going to happen. The solution was delivered to me when one of my mentors made an unsolicited offer. Could she refer me to a therapist for grief counseling? With me largely dysfunctional, I took her up on it. Grief counseling, I was told by my new psychiatrist, typically requires 6 months. I did the 6 months, but I stayed in therapy for 3 years. I went weekly without fail because it was there that I began to retrieve the part of myself I didn't even know I had buried. The Shelly I had imperceptibly forgotten over years of doggedly becoming the next version of her. Losing my dad and needing to move forward past the grief brought me to therapy's door. But when I walked through it, I was stunned to find myself moving backward to the past, to my past, to the history of me, all the way up to that moment I was in. And my friends, this was a very hard wake-up call. I was confronted with the countless ways I had either undervalued, ignored, or dismissed my human sufferings to maintain my forward momentum. How unkind I had been in deciding I was not as tough or capable or worthy as this new person I was becoming. First the doctor person, then the ICU doctor person. I leapt over every crack in my path. I kept going. I barreled through. I acted unflappable without ever looking up. And I was declared commendably resilient by all of my seniors and supervisors, enviously successful by every trainee I supervised or mentored. When I began therapy and began the journey backwards, back to myself, to dismantle all the ways in which I disappeared my humanity under the veneer of what I thought was resilience, I wondered, was this a Shelly problem or a broader medical cultural one? It made me curious about the students and residents and fellows I worked with every day. How well did I know them and how they were faring in their own intensely engaged becoming process? I tried something new, during their orientation sessions when they would start their blocks with us. I used to do this some years ago in my department. So what I did was I threw away our orientation schedule about here's where you put your stuff and here's the bathroom. And I made it wide open and I said, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about ourselves. And so to set the tone as to what I had in mind and make it easier for everyone, naturally I went first. So I said something like this. I was born, raised, fully educated, trained, reside, and work in Toronto. So you might say I've gotten to where I am by literally going nowhere. I'm wife to a nephrologist because the rom-coms are right. When the glasses come off, nerds do fall in love. And for a nerd, my husband is aging irritatingly well. While I contend with the 759 serums to keep this shit tight, that dude doesn't wash his fucking face, and he's gorgeous. I'm mom to 17-year-old Nathan, hilariously intense, and 15-year-old Jack, intensely hilarious, or as we sometimes refer to them, planned and unplanned, respectively. To peer sophisticated, I say The Godfather is my favorite film, but it's really Beverly Hills Cop featuring my imaginary life partner, Eddie Murphy. I'm an aspiring writer. I'm happiest when I'm cooking or baking for other people, and I feel like a new girl when I get my nails done. So that's what I said about myself, something like this. Okay, so then I go to the residents and the students. What about you? When it was time for them to share, one person after the next tightly packaged their entire selves into 3 pieces of data. Mohammed, second year internal medicine, and then looks to the next person. Aisha, first year OB. Sarah, second year anesthesia. When I relentlessly probed further, but like, where did you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Initially, they'd be like, back down, creepy lady. But eventually, it would elicit a facial expression of strain in all of them, like this. Like they were trying to reach something that they couldn't quite get their hands around. And when we finally made it around the room with my probing questions, the eventual comment would come every single time I did this. Wow, it's been a really long time since I've thought about all of that. All of that. I couldn't believe what I had heard when I first heard it. That's exactly how I referred to my own before medicine life to my therapist. Why is all of that relevant to my life today? And now hearing it from the residents just shook me. How early the lessons in self-obliteration are learned in our incessant becoming. It's our professional habit to perniciously stow away a lifetime of experiences into a concealed inner space labeled all of that. But it's exactly in all of that where your humanity is located. It's in accessing all of that that you must ground your internal process of resilience. All of that is where the most distinctive parts of us live and what gives rise to our distinctive practices. Our work is about and for our patients. Of course it is. Our work isn't about us, but our work is beautifully infused with us, with the unique stories of our lives expressed in the way each of us uniquely provide care. It's within these histories that our humanism resides. And to leave these unexplored and forgotten is the antithesis of true humanistic practice. And in not habitually tending to that inherent seed of goodness, that Ren, the process of true resilience is impossible to engage. So it can't come as a surprise that we are left at a loss when we most need the fruit of that seed of goodness. We have come up with many terms to describe this loss: burnout, compassion fatigue, empathy erosion, depersonalization, and it really doesn't matter what we call it. It does matter, though, that we recognize how damaging this loss has been and continues to be to us personally and communally. And when we continue to hurt in this way, our patients will hurt in another way. Because when we all, under some awesome cultural pressure, put aside the people we were before medicine, the people we still are buried underneath medicine, to become the healthcare worker, we automatically and unknowingly began to separate ourselves from our patients. They were something different, something other than us. We have to protect ourselves, we've all been warned, from too closely identifying with the suffering we saw in the name of professional objectivity, control, authority, unflappability, resilience. This conventional so-called wisdom arose from another ardent belief that we, the healthcare workers, must be vigilant, obsessive even, about not seeing ourselves in our patients, as vulnerable people like our patients. They are not us, we are not them. It's a stubbornly upheld belief that again develops in the earliest moments of training. I noticed it during a week on call some years ago, when there was this one day where there were two really sad deaths. Two fathers who were sole providers for their young immigrant families had died, leaving their children and partners bereft. So as a team, we took a moment of silence for these two patients, and then we dispersed. But one resident quietly remained. And I asked her if she was okay, and she waited a second and she said, "Dr. Dev, I get that we're not supposed to do this, but I can't stop thinking about my parents." If your heart can break and swell at the same time, that's what mine did in that moment. The conundrum is there in her words. I'm not supposed to relate to my patients or their families as a fellow human. If a good doctor is one who disappears her personhood at work, what does that make me if I can't do that? Insisting on our separateness from our patients as others to be cared for instead of humans to be felt with means we have missed countless opportunities to relate to our patients as fellow human beings, as people who are also not immune to sickness or suffering. We miss recognizing that we, like all people, are, in the words of French philosopher Paul Ricoeur, simultaneously capable and vulnerable. Ricoeur's words remind me of those of one of my writing heroes, Susan Sontag, in her revelatory work, Illness as Metaphor, a piece she wrote in 1978 while undergoing treatment for cancer. In the first paragraph of this essay, she writes, "Everyone who is born holds dual citizenship in the kingdom of the well and the kingdom of the sick. And although we all prefer to use only the good passport, sooner or later, each of us is obliged, at least for a spell, to identify as citizens of that other place." When I read those words, the meaning was unmistakable. We are the patients are us. The duality of true humanistic medicine is one we never learn to inhabit. We never learn that as physicians, we can be both capable and vulnerable, that we too will inhabit both the kingdom of the well and the kingdom of the sick, that our lives as medical workers is always simultaneously both difficult and amazing. So now take out your lists, those two lists I made you write. These lists represent the duality of your life in this particular moment. The sucky and the good, the difficult and the amazing, the vulnerable and the capable. What emotions do your lists bring up? What do they make you want to do more of or just do away with? What is the meaning of these thoughts to you right now? When you do something like this, you take a crucial step in your internal process of resilience. You begin to notice, without judgment, with no right or wrong, with no eye on a solution, a fix, or a cure. You take 2 minutes, because that is all we took, to notice yourself in the now and ask yourself a crucial question. How am I? But the first step in creating a sturdy internal framework for your process of resilience, before you notice and ask yourself, how am I? You must know, who am I? To practice humanistic medicine is to practice what I call a self-honoring medicine, a practice where you can recognize that being a physician is just one branch of your tree, a branch that cannot evolve without the grounding trunk that carries your history, your journey, your humanity, your essential goodness in its rings. It's time for you to exhume your original selves and go back to the beginning. I locate my beginning on September 22nd, 1965. No, that is not the date of my birth. It was the date my dad arrived in Canada, one day before his 26th birthday from the northern Indian state of Punjab, against the wishes of his parents with less than $100. He would spend his first weeks in Canada living at the Montreal YMCA, getting locked in a subway station overnight more than once, and having his flimsy canvas sneakers, his only shoes, sucked into the depths of a snowbank during his first Canadian winter. That's my beginning. What about your beginning? How did the story of you start? How did that person get here to today? Who is the person who wanted to work in medicine or work in infectious diseases? And importantly, how does that person show up in your work every day? The first crucial question in the practice of self-honoring medicine is, who are you? Being fully visible, fully included in our daily work of medicine means being valued for the individual offerings we each bestow on our patients, our colleagues, our community. Because of the singular lives we've lived, the unique paths we've traversed, the particular hardships we've grown through. And this is why, contrary to popular yet despicable discourse, you are not, in fact, replaceable. This is me officially sanctioning you to politely tell anyone who says otherwise to kindly fuck off. Then tell them Shelly Dev put you up to it. You are not replaceable. Nobody does your work in precisely the way you do it, and no one will. To possess this conviction, then, it is imperative that you first make the story of you visible to yourself, because the person you are is foundational to your work in medicine, not separate from it. Bring that person to work every day. Hold that person up vividly. Building a sturdy internal framework for your humanistic process of resilience first requires you to know yourself. So go back to your beginning and ask yourself the first crucial question: who am I? And this is not an easy question to answer because we have, over dutiful generations, been trained to forget all of that. We have been professionalized to detachedly look away from our human selves. So when we are forced to come face to face with our humanity, we are simply not prepared for it. It happened to me when my dad died. It happened to all of us when COVID hit. And when it did, it was strangely destabilizing for us in particular, because it was the first time that so many of us in medicine had to reckon with our humanity in a way that is so precisely captured in an ancient proverb. There, but for the grace of God, go I. The patient is no longer always going to be some other person. The patient is me. The patient is my parents, my partner, my children, my grandparents, my best friends. In an instant, we became human again, and we were not emotionally prepared to contend with it. By the start of 2022, I knew I had grossly overestimated how well I was managing the weight of everything that had taken place in the 2 years before, when I realized the only thing I found myself looking forward to in the day was a glass of red wine, or two, or more. It had all been too much. Once again, in not tending to my humanity, to my Ren, and consequently being disengaged from my internal process of resilience, I was at a loss. I was losing who I was and losing sight of how I was. And that is when a friend and colleague took note. She suggested I make a phone call one I hadn't thought to make until she brought it up. And so I did. I called my therapist for the first time in 5 years and restarted therapy. And it helped. I am the patient is me. It's when our internal framework for resilience eludes us, because it will, and angry coping is our habitual default stance, because it is, that we need our colleagues and friends, those key pillars holding up the external framework for our processes of resilience. We need them to go first for us. You go first when you offer connection to a colleague in need so they don't have to ask. It's taking note of the people around you by asking yourself the last crucial question: how is everyone else? This is not about workplace collegiality, it's about workplace friendship, and it can prove to be utter salvation. Take note of the people around you at work, those embodiers of your workplace joy, and ask yourself the final crucial question: how is everyone else? Go first for them and know that they will go first for you. So there you go. 3 crucial questions to begin your humanistic process of resilience in your practice of self-honoring medicine. Crucial question number 1: who am I? Know yourself. Take a big step backward to the beginning of the story of you. Remind yourself of yourself before all the becoming took hold. Then step forward into the present moment. Notice yourself and answer crucial question number 2: how am I? Those are your 2-minute lists. You know how to do that now. As a daily practice, take 2 minutes to look at all the shitty, all the good, all the difficult and the amazing, your vulnerabilities and capabilities. What are the lists telling you about what you need more of in that moment? Sometimes what you need is as accessible as a favorite movie, or in my case, another pair of shoes. But sometimes, importantly, it's more. And sometimes it isn't you who's doing the noticing about needing more. I have been rescued so many times because my friends at work took note of me. Like when my practice partners visited me at my home when my dad was dying and showed up for his funeral. When my mentor took the step to ask a colleague psychiatrist to be my therapist. When my colleague saw me struggling during the pandemic and suggested I call my therapist. In all of my darkest moments, I didn't have to find a way through my own darkness to be helped. All of those people who knew me knew I needed them to turn on the lights for me, and they went first and saved my life. So look around and ask yourself crucial question number 3: how is everyone else? Take note of your colleagues who are also your friends. Go first. And please know, you don't need the answer or the solution to help someone feel better. This isn't about fixing or curing or solving. This is about the room we offer to someone who may need it as an act of friendship. Bring them a coffee, ask them about their weekend. Trust me, even the lowest hanging fruit tastes sweet. Who am I? How am I? How is everyone else? 3 crucial questions you can start asking yourself now, today. Your resilience is a process, not an outcome, a process that moves you to locate the capabilities within the vulnerabilities, the amazing within the difficult, a process that is rooted in your humanity, your seed of goodness, your Ren, a process that culminates in the practice of self-honoring medicine. So with that, I will say thank you for your time, for your attention, for considering what I've said, and thank you most importantly for being wonderful people who do good work every day. Thank you.
Shelly, thank you so much. I've just many there are comments that said, how therapeutic this has been, and coming at a great time, I think, given what we have gone through collectively. I think you've given us lots to consider and reflect on. And I will, I think, say on behalf of everyone, you are welcome to come to be an ID adjacent anytime, an honorary member of our division. I know we're just slightly over time, and I don't think we have enough time for. No, I think it's actually probably better to have the time to reflect in many ways, and again, just opening up those avenues for consideration. Anyway, thank you. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks everyone for showing up and sticking around, and all these fun, beautiful emojis you're sending my way. I feel the love, friends, and I'm sending it right back.
Thank you.
All right. Be well, everybody.
Take care.